Welcome to The Explainer. Let me ask you a question. Are you a mind that just happens to have a body? Like a ghost driving a machine? It sounds a little strange, but for centuries, that very idea, this massive split between mind and matter, has shaped, well, pretty much everything, from science to how we see ourselves. But here's the kicker. What if that split is actually the single biggest mistake in all of modern thought? All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to take a journey through a few centuries of brilliant and sometimes wild ideas. First up, we'll diagnose the problem, this huge crack that split the modern world in two. Then we'll meet the first philosophical doctors who tried to patch it up. After that, we'll see how a total revolution in thinking reframed the entire issue. And finally, we'll dive into a really radical treatment that basically asks us to just trust our own gut experience. Ready? Let's get into it. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning, at the source of the problem. And I want to be clear, this isn't just some abstract puzzle for philosophers to chew on in an ivory tower. No, this is like a deep, fundamental crack running through the very foundation of modern science and philosophy. You could even call it an intellectual illness, one that some of the greatest minds in history have dedicated their lives to trying to cure. And here it is, the core diagnosis. The philosopher Alfred North Whitehead actually gave it a name, and it's a mouthful, the Cartesian bifurcation. It's basically the legacy of one guy, René Descartes, who sliced reality clean in two. On one side, you have our inner world, thoughts, feelings, consciousness. And on the other side, a cold, lifeless, mechanical universe of just stuff. And the big problem? He said they could never, ever truly meet. Descartes even had fancy Latin names for these two worlds. On the one hand, you have res cogitans, which literally means thinking stuff. This is the good stuff, right? Consciousness, purpose, all our subjective experiences. But then on the other hand, there's res extensa, the extended stuff. Think of this as the entire physical universe, just a giant clockwork machine with no meaning or value. And this right here is the question that has haunted philosophy ever since. How in the world can a thought, something with no size or location, move a physical arm? How can a feeling possibly move a gear in the machine? How do these two completely separate realities even talk to each other? Right from the get-go, a lot of thinkers looked at this split and thought, this just doesn't feel right. So the first wave of philosophical healers who came along to tackle this problem tried a pretty bold approach. They wanted to mend the crack by arguing that, actually, reality isn't made of two things at all. When you get right down to it, they said, it's all just one thing. And leading the charge was this guy, Baruch Spinoza. He's probably one of the most famous and direct critics of Descartes. He just looked at this whole mind-matter divide and came up with a solution that was, frankly, stunningly elegant. His idea? Just get rid of the divide completely. Okay, so here's the core of it. For Spinoza, there's only one substance in the entire universe, and he called it God or nature. They were the same thing to him. Now, what we call mind and what we call matter, they aren't separate things fighting to connect. Not at all. They're just two different ways of looking at that one single reality. Think of it like a coin. It has a head side and a tail side, but it's still just one coin. So mind and body don't need to be connected because they were never separate to begin with. They're just two sides of the same cosmic coin.
All right, after Spinoza, you get Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. And if you thought Spinoza's idea was bold, Leibniz takes it to a whole other level. He also hated the idea of a dead mechanical universe. But instead of just unifying mind and matter, he went, you know what? Let's just fill the entire cosmos with mind.
So Leibniz's big idea is that the most basic building blocks of reality aren't little physical atoms. Nope. They're monads, these infinite, tiny, soul-like points of perception, little sparks of experience. In his universe, there's actually no such thing as dead, unthinking matter. He basically solves the mind-body problem by just deleting the body half of the equation. For him, everything, from a rock to you and me, has some tiny degree of perception. It's a wild idea called panpsychism, the belief that consciousness, or at least a proto-consciousness, goes all the way down. Okay, so we've got two big ideas so far. Either everything is one big substance, or everything is basically mind. But these cures kind of lead to a new question, a bigger one. What if we've been asking the wrong thing all along? What if the real issue isn't what the world is made of, but has more to do with how our own minds are shaping everything we think we know? And that very question brings us to one of the heavyweights of philosophy, Immanuel Kant. This guy staged what he called his own Copernican revolution in thought. See, he didn't just come up with another cure for the mind-body problem, he completely reframed the entire debate. He shifted the spotlight away from the world and pointed it right back at the mind doing the perceiving. Kant's big move was this. He said that for centuries, we've all just assumed that our minds are like mirrors, passively reflecting the world out there. He just flipped that completely on its head. He argued that the world we experience actually has to conform to the structure of our minds. We aren't just empty vessels soaking up information. Our minds are actively building our reality. So here's Kant's crucial distinction, and it's a big one. He talks about the phenomenal world. That's the world as it appears to us, the one our minds have already structured with concepts like space, time, and causality. It's like we're all wearing the same pair of reality-shaping glasses. This is the world that science can measure and study. But then there's the noumenal world. That's reality as it actually is in itself, without our mental filters. And according to Kant, we can never know it directly. So his cure is to basically build a firewall. He says, look, science is great. It's totally valid, but only for the phenomenal world, the world our minds build. And because science can't peek behind that curtain into ultimate reality, it can't tell us anything about things like free will or morality. It saves a space for them. Kant's revolution was absolutely massive, no doubt about it. But fast forward to the 20th century, and a new group of thinkers came along who felt that philosophy had gotten, well, way too lost in abstract ideas. These were the phenomenologists, and their whole goal was to heal the mind-body split by just going back to square one, to our immediate, conscious, lived experience of the world, before we start layering all our theories on top of it. The founder of this whole movement was a guy named Edmund Husserl, and he argued that modern science was facing a huge crisis. It had gotten so good, so successful at making these perfect, objective, mathematical models of the world that it completely forgot where those models even came from. I love this analogy. It's like a map maker who spends so much time perfecting his map that he starts to believe the map is the actual territory. Husserl's solution was to get back to what he called the life world. That's it. It's just the rich, immediate, messy, colorful world of our everyday lives. The world of coffee cups and conversations and walking in the park. Science, he said, is a powerful abstraction that we build on top of that foundation. And here's the key. That mind-body split, it's an error that only shows up when we mistake the scientific model for the real thing. Once we get back to the life world, we realize, hey, the me who's thinking and the world I'm thinking about, they were never really separate in the first place. Now, one of Husserl's star students, Martin Heidegger, took this whole idea and just ran with it. He pushed it even further. He argued that our very existence, at its most fundamental level, is completely unified. You know that detached scientific observer that Descartes was so obsessed with? Heidegger said that's not our default setting. That's not how we are naturally. It's a weird, distorted, artificial way of being. For Heidegger, our most basic way of being is what he called Dasein. It's a German word that basically means being there, and it describes a single, unified, unbreakable phenomenon, being in the world. The best way to get this is with an example. Think about hammering a nail. When you're in the zone, you're not thinking, I, the subject, am using this object, the hammer, to hit that object, the nail. No, you're just hammering. You and the hammer and the nail are all part of one activity. The split between you and the tool only appears when the hammer breaks or you hit your thumb and you have to stop and think about it. For Heidegger, Descartes just got it completely backward. He started with a division that just isn't there in our real lived experience. And finally, that brings us to Maurice Merleau-Ponty. He took this whole phenomenological cure and brought it right back down to earth, focusing on the one place where mind and matter are just obviously, constantly, and undeniably tangled up together, our own bodies. Merleau-Ponty just completely threw out the idea that we're a mind piloting a body machine. He said, no, we're a body subject. Our consciousness is our body in action. It's embodied. The body isn't some tool we use, it's the very medium through which we exist. It's the living, breathing bridge where the mind and the world actually meet. And for him, trying to split them is impossible. It's like trying to separate the dancer from the dance. You just can't do it. So, wow. From Spinoza's idea of one single substance to Merleau-Ponty's focus on the lived body, we've basically seen centuries of brilliant minds trying to heal this deep split that Descartes left us with. After this grand tour of philosophical medicine, the big question is, where does that leave us now? When you look back at all of this, you can kind of see two main strategies for a cure popping up. On one side, you have thinkers like Spinoza, who tried to fix the split by basically saying, hey, mind and matter were never two separate things to begin with. But then you have another group, from Kant all the way to the phenomenologists, who argued that the split was never really out there in the world. It was a mistake in our heads, an abstract idea that we got so used to, we forgot it was just an idea. And while all these thinkers came up with these really complex, elaborate cures, maybe the most famous takedown of the original problem came from a 20th century philosopher named Gilbert Ryle. He said the whole idea of a mind separate from a body was just a category mistake, like asking for a tour of the university and then at the end saying, okay, but where is the university? But he summed it all up in one absolutely iconic phrase. He dismissed the whole thing as nothing more than a belief in the dogma of the ghost in the machine. Look, the conversation these incredible thinkers started is nowhere near over. And this isn't just some dusty old philosophical debate. It cuts right to the very heart of who you are. How you answer this question shapes how we think about everything from artificial intelligence and consciousness to our connection with the planet and our place in the cosmos. So, after all this, the question really comes back to you. Are you a ghost in a machine, or are you something else entirely?